B of A today reiterates a buy 200, very compelling price, they argue. Is there any risk of Jensen disappoint? How would he disappoint next week?
He would disappoint by saying that that they have Rubin, their next iteration, and people are starting to skip Blackwell for the next one, which would then cause a freeze. But I don't think they're going to. That would be something that I don't think Jensen will say. I think Jensen's before this conference, you can't reach him. He's just in quiet. We don't know. So to speculate what he's going to say is to run the risk of really going against the Manhattan Project. You just never know what they're up to.
Right. By the way, as for semis, Jim, pretty remarkable number, 5% above the 200 DMA. 5% in semis. I mean, if that's not a washout, what would you call it?
No, it is a washout. You know, the semis are divided between the Internet of Things and telco. And the telco's been horrible. The poster boy's been Marvell Tech, where the numbers were actually quite good, but nobody cared. That's a stock that was cut in half. Broadcom down 18%. That's an incredible company that blew away the quarter. Texas Instruments didn't have a bad quarter. I mean, you go over these. Obviously, Intel, there's always a rumor floated every day. Now it's Taiwan Semi wanting their not-so-great fabs. Before it's Marvell's going to buy they're going to buy Altera, and then it was Silver Lake going to be in. I mean, may I suggest that they stop talking? They just should stop. I mean, like in Reuters, give Reuters something. Well, I'm waiting for the FT to say that any minute now Qualcomm's going to buy them after Qualcomm denied, and then Broadcom after Hock Tan denied. But people can say anything, and it's irritating. Maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the boy who cried wolf, and really there is something for Intel. But I think Intel's overvalued. But Intel's part of the problem in terms of the market cap.
Yeah.
In a move that's sending shockwaves through the tech world, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing has reportedly approached some of the biggest names in the semiconductor industry, including Nvidia, AMD, and Broadcom, to propose a shocking partnership between the three chip giants. What is this project they are partnering for? How is it going to benefit the investors and the companies? And is this why Nvidia's stock is rising once again? All these questions will be answered soon. Welcome back, everyone, to Investocracy.
For clients that had a lot of cash, we've been selectively putting our toe in the water. Names that we're adding are names like Nvidia. We've been adding Nvidia on this re-rating because it's become meaningfully more attractive from a price standpoint.
Look, I don't think anybody's crazy enough to stop the supply chain for semiconductor chips. And I don't think there'll be heavy tariffs on it, particularly when they talk about investing. But they've got a queue that are people waiting for capacity. We hear NVIDIA talk about that all the time. So to me, this stock is very undervalued here.
19 times.
Yeah. And I don't see, by the way, where NVIDIA is trading at 19 times next year.
Yeah.
It's still significant.
It's like
25.
But he was talking about 26.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You know, we've seen the markets come back in, and I have to tell you, we were buying some yesterday because now you see NVIDIA at 18 or 19 times next year's earnings. Now you're getting paid.
But they weren't the only ones, obviously. Christina Partsenevelos joins us now. I'm looking at a lot of these names. Broadcom, Micron, you can go on and talk about more broadly too, but at some point this was going to become a buy, whether it's a lasting one or not, who knows?
Yeah, especially when you talk about valuations. NVIDIA trading, well, yesterday it was at 24 times when you had it, just a few weeks ago at 29 times. So some say it's a big bargain. But to your point, the SMH is finally breaking its losing streak. It's heading up, and after down 2 days, last 2 days, but I don't want you to get too excited yet, as it's still looking at its fourth weekly drop in a row, to your point. So how long is this going to last? The SMH does track NVIDIA more closely than the SOX does. We often talk about both as chip barometers, and so that's why you'll usually see the SMH and NVIDIA move in tandem, or the SMH move higher when NVIDIA is higher. And speaking of NVIDIA, to your point, there was a story I want to focus on. Reuters today putting out that TSMC pitched NVIDIA, AMD, and Broadcom on teaming up with Intel for a foundry joint venture. This isn't exactly breaking news, so let me explain. These rumors have just been going on since mid-February. Even DigiTimes out of Taiwan was talking about Taiwan Semiconductor actually joining forces with some U.S. chip designer. The interesting part is that today's report from Reuters mentioned this pitch happened before TSMC announced that massive $100 billion U.S. investment on March 3rd. You're seeing a headline on your screen right now. But so realistically, this deal might be a little less likely now that TSMC is already committing so much money to the United States and their expansion. Still, word is that talks haven't completely died yet, and that's why you're seeing so many of these names higher today. And of course, just people snapping up the chips because they've been lower on valuations, and earnings have been strong, Scott.
As the curtain lifts on one of the most riveting developments in the semiconductor space, TSMC's proposal to operate Intel's foundry division is set to reshape the landscape. Imagine the synergy when giants like Nvidia, AMD, and Broadcom rub shoulders. It's like the Avengers assembling in the chip world, only with less spandex and more silicon. But before going on with the video, are you into cryptocurrency? If so, check out our second channel, Investocracy Crypto. We bring you breaking news, expert analysis, and the latest trends in the fast-moving world of digital assets. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor or just curious about the future of finance, we've got something for you. Click the link in the description to subscribe to Investocracy Crypto now. Don't miss out and stay ahead of the game. Now, let's get back to the video.
Good morning, Becky. I think, first of all, from a sector perspective, consolidation has been a key part of the semiconductor sector over the last dozen years. Every year, it has made the sector a lot more profitable. An average semiconductor company has 2 or 3 times the free cash flow generation capability of an average industrial company in the S&P 500. What it's also saying is that AI has been a theme and has been a very important theme. And if you don't have an AI pipeline, then you're kind of more subject to being taken over and being split up, which is what Intel is seeing. Having said all that, I think there are challenges in any kind of potential breakup, right? We have to say that none of these companies have made any official statements. So a lot of these are assumptions at this stage. But what makes this situation very tricky is, number one, that the way Intel manufactures its products is very different than the way TSMC manufactures its products. So it's hard to see TSMC just essentially take over all of Intel's manufacturing because there are differences in the way they manufacture products. There could be synergies of scale for TSMC. And when it comes to Broadcom, for them to consider Intel's PC and server design business means a very extended regulatory process, especially in China. And the last time Broadcom tried to buy a company back in 2017, when they tried to take over Qualcomm, it took a very long time, and unfortunately, it did not result in a successful endeavor. So I think a lot has to happen before we get to the other side of this.
I agree with everything you've just said. I guess what makes this a little different is that TSMC is kind of getting dragged into this because of a request coming from the Trump administration. How does that change the scenario? The idea that the Trump administration would like to see them get involved with the factories, and the U.S. has put a lot of money into several $1 billion over the last couple of years into Intel and wants to make sure that they can make sure that there are chips being manufactured in the United States.
Right. For sure. We have seen a CHIPS Act give money to not just Intel, by the way. CHIPS Act has made a lot of allocation to Taiwan Semi, who is also making factories in Arizona. Many of those factories can serve AI customers here in the U.S. So it's not true that Intel is the only option for making advanced semiconductors in the U.S. TSMC is an important option and is becoming a bigger option, number one. Number two is that TSMC publicly has not shown interest in buying all of Intel. Whether they can consider part of Intel, part of Intel's manufacturing is a separate situation, and maybe they could. But until there is a room for all of Intel's manufacturing in one clean place, even Broadcom, according to media reports, is not interested in looking at the product side. So I agree with you that there is absolutely a lot of interest in making sure that Intel succeeds. It's an iconic brand name. But so far, there is no proposal on the table that has room for all of Intel's manufacturing under one clean entity.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Although discussions are in their infancy, the implications are nothing short of monumental. The Trump administration, pivotal in these matters, has a vested interest in the success of Intel, a cornerstone of U.S. industry. But approval hinges on preventing full foreign ownership, hinting at a delicate dance of diplomacy. TSMC's meteoric rise can't be overstated. Their recent 39.2% revenue leap in early 2025 illustrates an insatiable demand for TSMC chips, especially in AI applications. This boom signifies a broader trend, with CEO C.C. Wei steering a $100 billion expansion targeting U.S. markets, a move driven by technological necessity over geopolitics. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
It sounds like you would not be making any moves until you hear more about what's really going on behind the scenes here?
That's right. I mean, we haven't underperformed on Intel because they don't have an AI pipeline and because their manufacturing is still significantly behind. And just TSMC taking a small stake is not going to change any of those scenarios. So we think it's quite speculative at this stage.
Very quickly, let me ask you about Nvidia. They're going to be reporting their earnings next month. They're obviously, or next week. They've obviously had so many questions about what's going on post DeepSeek, whether there's going to be demand for their chips. But we did hear from all of the big majors, whether that be Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, any of them, looking at spending even more next time around this year for CapEx. Does that? How do you feel about the shares, given the pullback that we've seen in Nvidia shares as a result?
Sure, absolutely. You know, when DeepSeek came out, somebody compared it to the Sputnik moment. I think it has been kind of a Sputnik moment because the U.S. spending on defense and aerospace went up, 10, 20-fold in the decade following that Sputnik moment. So, since DeepSeek news came out, we have seen, I think, Becky, to your point, the U.S. hyperscalers raise their capex. What was supposed to be a 20% growth year is now over a 30% growth year, over $360 billion. We have seen Stargate being announced with $500 billion of spending over multiple years. And then last week, what I think probably went unnoticed is the intention of European customers to spend. The European Commission announced a 200 billion euro program. France announced a 109 billion euro program, all for investing in AI. So we think this is a long-term theme. When it comes to NVIDIA's earnings specifically, they are going through a product transition. There are China kind of restriction headwinds. So it's possible that the quarter they guide, might be a tad squishy, but we look forward. The stock is trading at the lower end of its valuation range. I think it is absolutely a leader in being able to benefit from a lot of this spending. So we would be buyers of NVIDIA. It's our top pick. But as I mentioned, that earnings are always a volatile time frame. But right after earnings, we think NVIDIA's GPU technology conference will help to put the positive momentum back in the stock.
As we stand at this crossroads of technological evolution, investing in companies like Nvidia, AMD, TSMC, or even Broadcom seems as promising as ever. With its resilient growth trajectory and strategic maneuvers, which includes partnering with tech behemoths and expanding their U.S. footprint, TSMC stands poised for a prosperous path forward, and companies like Nvidia will benefit from just that. But what do you think? Share your thoughts. Finally, if you would like to know what companies like Nvidia have been up to these past few days, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.